The afternoon had settled into that gray, heavy stillness Chicago knows too well in late November, the kind that sinks over O'Hare and turns the entire airport into a dull reflection of lights and motion. Rain had passed through earlier, leaving thin sheets of water across the runways that mirrored every beacon and taxiway stripe in trembling streaks. A United 737 had just rolled toward Gate C17, engines humming as ground crews guided it in with glowing wands. The usual noise filled the air, jet wash, radio chatter, and the rumble of baggage carts, but one ramp worker suddenly stopped mid-step. Something above the gate pulled his eyes upward. It hung there, a metallic disc hovering just beneath the dense cloud layer. At first he thought it had to be a balloon drifting in the wind, but this object didn't sway, tilt, or drift at all. It held perfectly still, about 200 feet above the gate, shaped like a clean, polished circle with edges too sharp to be anything inflatable. Its surface looked like brushed steel, no seams or markings, and it gave off no light. More unsettling was the silence. Even with the roar of aircraft all around him, he expected at least some kind of hum or vibration from a machine floating in midair. There was nothing. He grabbed his radio and asked another worker if he could see anything unusual above C-17. The mechanic stepped out from under the 737's wing, squinted upward, and froze. He saw it too, solid, circular, unmoving. He walked farther onto the tarmac to get a better angle, wiping rain from his face as he tried to make sense of what hovered overhead. Within moments, more employees left their positions to look. A supervisor carrying a clipboard walked out from the terminal. A pilot waiting for his aircraft stepped down the jet bridge stairs and moved closer to the ramp. A small cluster of workers gathered near a luggage cart, all pointing at the same spot in the sky. Each description lined up. The disc was metallic but not reflective. It had no windows, no tail, no wings. No one saw any kind of propulsion. Some swore the outer rim rotated slowly. Others insisted it stayed totally still. What united them was the absolute silence of it. They were used to identifying aircraft quickly, even from odd angles or partial views. This object didn't resemble anything the airport handled or anything known to be allowed inside restricted airspace. The longer they stared, the more unnatural its stillness felt, as though it wasn't merely hovering but occupying a fixed point with intent. A United pilot called the operations center and asked whether air traffic control had spotted anything unusual near the concourse. The reply came back without hesitation. Radar was clear. No unauthorized aircraft, no anomalies, nothing out of place. The pilot walked outside anyway and joined the group staring up at the disc. He had flown for decades and knew the sky around O'Hare almost as well as the runways beneath his feet. Whatever he was looking at did not belong to any category of aircraft he had ever encountered. The object held its position for several minutes. Witnesses later struggled to guess how long because the moment felt suspended, time stretching in a way that made seconds feel much longer. The clouds above the airport hung thick and unmoving, leaving the disc framed against the low ceiling of gray. The rain had died down, leaving the air cool and damp, and the workers' breath formed faint vapors as they stood staring upward. No one stepped away. No one wanted to blink. Then it moved. With no warning, the disc shot straight upward at a speed no one there had ever seen a machine achieve. There was no buildup, no tilt, no burst of air. It went from stationary to gone in an instant, punching a clean circular hole through the clouds as it vanished. The opening looked impossibly crisp, a round cutout revealing blue sky above the overcast layer. Several employees gasped, and one ramp worker instinctively stepped backward, as if bracing for impact. The hole didn't close right away. It stayed visible long enough for employees to pull out their phones and capture photos of it, a perfect circle cut directly into the cloud deck. Inside the terminal, passengers noticed commotion near the windows and asked what had happened. Most employees didn't want to explain it out loud. Some didn't have the words. Others didn't want to sound ridiculous describing a silent metal disc floating above Gate C17. A few tried to rationalize it in the break rooms, suggesting a drone test or a weather anomaly, but even those explanations felt thin. Everyone who had seen it knew how precisely the object had hovered and how violently fast it had exited the sky. As reports spread through airline staff, several employees submitted official statements to their supervisors. A mechanic wrote that he felt the object looked solid enough to cast a shadow if the sun had been out. A ramp supervisor described the stillness of the disk as unnatural, noting that even helicopters produced some kind of turbulence. A pilot emphasized the vertical acceleration, calling it instantaneous, something no jet or rotorcraft could replicate. Dozens of trained aviation workers gave consistent accounts, and not one suggested it had been an airplane. United Airlines reached out to the Federal Aviation Administration, and the FAA eventually released a public statement claiming the event was weather-related, suggesting the hole in the clouds was caused by a natural phenomenon. The employees who had watched the disk punch through the cloud layer rejected that explanation immediately. They knew what they saw leave that circular gap behind. The hole appeared at the same instant the disk shot upward, and its edges were too clean to be some random atmospheric effect. Workers talked among themselves long after the official dismissal, knowing the explanation didn't fit what they witnessed. In the days that followed, conversations about the sighting took place in break areas, crew vans, and quiet corners of the terminal. Some employees said they felt unsettled when walking past Gate C17. Others found themselves glancing at the sky more often, checking the same low cloud ceiling where the disk had appeared. A few avoided discussing it altogether, worried about being teased or doubted, even though so many people had seen the same thing. What held them together was the certainty of the details, the metallic circle, the perfect stillness, the silent ascent, and that precise cut in the clouds. Months passed with no follow-up from the FAA that satisfied the witnesses. No investigation results were shared, no deeper explanation was offered, and no one from federal agencies interviewed the employees with any seriousness. The event faded from public attention, but it didn't fade from the memories of the workers who had been outside that day. For them, the sighting remained one of the clearest things they had ever seen in the sky. It wasn't distant or blurry. It wasn't imagined. It hovered low enough that the shape, texture, and size were unmistakable. The disk never returned to O'Hare, but every witness carried the same detail with them, a detail that didn't match anything built by human hands. An object that appeared silently, hovered without motion, and then departed with a speed nothing at the airport could match. They didn't know what it was or why it had come, but each one knew they had watched something real, the kind of moment that stayed sharp in the mind long after the clouds closed again and the airport returned to routine. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.